In today's hyper-connected world, there is a quiet pressure to wear your identity on your sleeve. We are expected to broadcast who we are, what we value, and which tribe we belong to. Also, someone scrolling by can understand us in a fraction of a second. This chart visualizes tattoo adoption rates across different age demographics. Look at the data for women under 30. 56% of them have at least one piece of ink. It is the baseline norm for visual expression today. But when you look closely at Gen X women, the data tells a different story. Nearly 2/3 of this specific demographic kept their skin completely blank, watching decades of cultural trends pass by without jumping in. Their hesitation had nothing to do with a lack of opportunity. By the late 1990s, the culture had already normalized the practice. You could walk into a clean studio at a strip mall on a Tuesday afternoon and get a piece done with your friends. The social permission was entirely there. Observers often dismiss this choice as a fear of the needle, the physical pain, or the long-term commitment. That reading is convenient, but it ignores the complex psychological machinery actually driving the decision. This blank skin serves as an entry point into how this generation constructs an identity, a process that relies on internal markers rather than external signals. Psychologically, a tattoo often functions as an external signpost. It is a tool used to take a piece of your internal world, a memory, an affiliation, or a way you process grief, and store it outside your body, where it can be pointed at and shared. This pie chart illustrates data from Pew Research on the motivations behind getting inked. The dominant slice shows that 69. To understand why so many Gen X women skipped this practice, you have to look back at the environment they grew up in. This is the generation defined by the latchkey childhood of the 1980s and early 90s. They spent thousands of hours coming home to empty houses, making their own snacks, and navigating the afternoon without an adult in the room. That kind of unmonitored development forces a child to build a self-sustaining internal compass. You learn to make decisions because you are the only one accountable. Because their identity formed entirely in private, away from constant digital observation and categorization, they never developed the hunger for external validation. There was no intense pull toward tribal signaling or visible proof of belonging. When your sense of self is built securely from the inside out, you simply do not require a permanent external container to prove to strangers that you exist. You already know exactly where to find your history. That deep internal security translates into a highly calibrated instinct. Marketing researchers consistently find that Gen X has the highest skepticism toward mass group enthusiasm of any living demographic. They watched cultural trends arrive, peak, and inevitably embarrass people on a reliable schedule. Take the tribal armband. The first people to get them made a raw, personal choice. But within 18 months, that meaning degraded as the design entered mass commercial production. The cycle repeated itself perfectly. The lower back pieces, the Chinese characters that translated to soup instead of strength, and eventually the infinity symbol with the word breathe looped through it. A unique statement would shift into a ubiquitous cliché almost overnight. Beyond the trend cycle, there was a strict practical reality waiting in the corporate world. The professional landscape of the 1990s had very rigid standards regarding how a credible woman should look in order to be taken seriously. In those environments, visible nonconformity attracted a severe level of scrutiny that had absolutely nothing to do with a person's actual talent or work ethic. Tattoos carried a highly specific professional consequence. Navigating the dual forces of hollow commercial trends and heavy career penalties trained these women to read the landscape with incredible precision. They learned to permanently recognize the gap between the statement a signal makes and the actual cost of broadcasting it. Applying strict irreversibility to a human being who never stops changing presents a unique cognitive challenge. If you possess a stable sense of self, you explicitly recognize that your personal data, your tastes, your politics, your aesthetics, is inherently unstable over a timeline of decades. You understand that the past version of you is practically a stranger to the adult you are today. Psychology labels this cognitive style as high conscientiousness. It is a decision-making framework that treats irreversibility as a steep cost, heavily weighting the possibility of future regret over the thrill of present-day enthusiasm. When people move too fast on permanent choices based entirely on temporary certainty, the results are expensive. They end up in clinics, paying to have the ink burned out of their skin while explaining that the person they were then is not who they are now. Opting out is a conscious, protective strategy. It is the deliberate choice to prevent a past version of yourself from locking the future version of yourself into a corner. We live in an era that demands maximum visibility. The algorithms pressure everyone to be immediately legible, expecting you to summarize your entire complex existence into a neat, easily categorized visual package. But a lack of external signposting creates a rare interpersonal advantage. When your story is not painted on your skin, people cannot process and dismiss you at a glance. Instead, they have to actually spend time with you. They must engage in a real conversation to discover your depth, because your identity is not pre-printed on the outside of the packaging. You retain the ability to be a genuine surprise. This blank surface protects the version of the self that hasn't arrived yet. It shows that the most durable parts of who we are often live where nobody else can see them.